Hey everybody, Mark Johnson here, founder and creative director of Able Abe Studios, back with the final book review of 2019. As we all know, we are already begun the new year, but I wanted to drop off and get in the last book that I read in this past year, 2019. The book that I have reviewing today is a book that I've read in the past, back in my school days at Butte College. Remember, this was a book that was part of the curriculum for a psychology class that I got into. And whether, I believe it was a prerequisite, but it could just be also an elective, because at that time I was taking a lot of classes I was just testing out to kind of see if they were interesting to me. But I believe it was a psychology class, and the professor that I had at that time was very cool. Very cool guy. Even after I had transferred out of Butte College and would see him around town, he was still, we would still conversate and still talk, and he was just a real personable guy. And so I really enjoyed his class. And so I saw this book on my bookshelf, and I was looking for some content. And like I said, why not give it another read? Because it's been so many years now since I read it originally and kind of went through the course, through the book. But the book that I'm talking about is ISHMAEL, An Adventure of the Mind and Spirit, a novel by Daniel Quinn. So the book, like it says, is not necessarily like a textbook. It's not really giving you, facts or figures or anything like that. It's more like a story. And what is interesting this time around is, I know I've read this book before, but it seems so new. Everything that I read in the book, except for maybe the idea of the story, I remember. I don't remember as much, because the story is basically a young man who has a in-depth conversation with an 800-pound gorilla who's not necessarily in a cage, but in a concealed space that he lives in, and that this young man can kind of visit him on a regular basis, and they have these deep talks about life and how they all got there, and basically the route that they're trying to get at is how can they save civilization from its doom. And so they kind of have this ongoing dialogue back and forth, and the gorilla has the young man do some research on some things that he doesn't necessarily know about, but the gorilla does. So they kind of talk about those things, and that's as much as I'll give you, but it's pretty in depth. I think it also is maybe a little bit before its time. I don't necessarily remember the first time I heard anything of like the ozone layer being depleted, or what they call it now, climate change, that kind of thing. But I believe it was after 1992. This is when this book is published, 1992. So I believe it was later than that, but it could be around the same time. But the idea that they're already talking about climate change within this book, and and we're seeing how things are playing out, whether you believe it or you don't believe it, you can't really refute the signs that are out there. But whatever the case, they're talking about that. They're talking about givers and takers, and how society has been split up into these two factions. The givers, which are the people who are giving back to society, giving back to nature, giving back to Mother Earth, and the takers, who are just taking from society, Mother Earth, and and society. So that's kind of how the story is kind of weaves and kind of takes you from place to place. I feel that this is a very easily readable book. It's not too dense. I guess if you didn't really have some of the biblical background that they talk about in this book, it may be you may be at a little bit of a loss, but I think they explain it pretty well. I think they kind of give a good enough examples that you could pick this up and read it and understand the story just as well, and kind of be able to be brought into this idea of the givers and the takers who created civilization. I would recommend it. I think it's a good story. I think it's a timely story. I would probably suggest it for like a teen, high school age, young college person, all the way up. Because like I said, the story is still pretty relevant. It's not just kind of like just some random story. I think, like I said, the story is kind of relevant to our time in the sense that we are dealing with climate change. I think for me, what's cool about this is the fact that, which I wish I would still remember, is some of the talks that we had in the classroom as we were going through this book. I think that would have been cool to kind of either have some notes or some, maybe even a recording of some of the comments. How we as a people can help better ourselves and better our society by learning what the givers gave to society and the takers, in a sense, gave to society or took from society, to that we could make ourselves better. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this reread, is trying to better understand it now than what I understood then. I think if it was me reflecting back on where I was at that time when I was reading the book first time, I probably would have just been open. I probably wouldn't really have any ideas on how to make things better because I was so young. I think now, and seeing how things have played out within my life as well as society, I might have some suggestions or some things that I could do better, or some concerns that I have now that I probably wouldn't have had at that time. So that's just kind of where I'm coming from on this book. Again, this is ISHMAEL, An Adventure of the Mind and Spirit, a novel by Daniel Quinn. And like I said, it's a good read, easy read. It reads more like a story. Anyone high school age on up can probably read this pretty easily and enjoy it. Get some good insight. So hopefully you like this book review. If you do, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing with the channel because you watch other content, maybe another book review or maybe some of the projects that I've shared on my channel, definitely subscribe. And if you have maybe a comment about this book because you've either read it or now you're interested in reading it, definitely leave me a comment in the comment box below. I'll definitely get back to you, and hopefully we can have a conversation back and forth. And so yeah, that has been my book review for Daniel Quinn's ISHMAEL, and looking forward to more book reviews in 2020. And I'll share and post whatever I read throughout the year, and hopefully we can have a conversation back and forth, because that's kind of the reason I really do post these, is to kind of see the interest level of some of the books that I read toward other people or for other people out there. So like we always do at this time, have a blessed day. See you on the flip side. Let's go.